Let's move on ahead with documentation. And I want to preface this portion by saying, first of all, one of the questions that has come up during the brainstorming and the conversations I've been having with people as we've been putting this workshop content together is the difference between documents and documentation. Obviously, as archivists, especially if you're coming from a sort of classical MLIS archivology background, you may have a very sort of SAA vocabulary informed idea of what is a document, or thinking about Suzanne Briette and is an antelope a document? The question that came up when I was back in library school. But I am going to be informed by this in this discussion by a presentation I saw that was given by Tanya Ewell, who's now at the Hoover Institution at Stanford. But back in 2018, she was a public broadcasting preservation fellow and gave a talk at the 2018 DigiPres conference about the public broadcasting preservation fellowship program. And she was specifically talking about developing documentation as a tool for training emerging audiovisual archivists, and her experience in the fellowship and the importance of documentation for, in her case, specifically doing audiovisual preservation tasks, video and digital preservation tasks within the context of a specific institution that had never really focused on their AV collections previously. So she highlighted some things that really struck home for me. The most important of which was that documentation isn't just documentation. A workflow document or a set of steps that are written down on paper as a reference or as a training manual or as a work in progress or documentation of a process that you are refining as you go along. It's great for its stated purpose, but it also has other functions. It's useful in other ways. So I think that's going to be the thing that we're going to focus on, the aspect or the distinction between documents and documentation that we're going to focus on here is the ways in which documentation can perform multiple tasks for you as the creator of those documents and documentation. So training manuals and workflow documents and binders full of information, even more casual forms of documentation like the Post-it note that you have on your computer or on a piece of equipment that says, you know, clean before using or clean after using. Sometimes they can be casual and informal documentation, but they make invisible labor visible. So if you are somebody who does work that is often performed behind closed doors, like collections processing, or that has a specific single visible outcome, like a cataloging record or a finding aid, all of the work that went into that creation isn't visible to the end user, but workflow documentation that leads to that preserved file or that catalog record that a user can search for and find. All of those things can really show how much effort went into it. If you have a 20-page workflow document, that really helps convey in a concrete way how complicated the work you are doing is and how much effort is involved in producing that single sort of polished outcome. It shows how the sausage is made. It's also evidence of how you do things, or in the case of older documentation, how you used to do things. The documents that you have that you update are still valuable as a reference point for older records. And so the version numbers or the little footer on your updated cataloging manual, that can be a marker for people to look for changes in data or processes or outcomes. So from this point forward, we're going to do things this way, but from this point backwards, we know that we were using this field in our database in a different way. We were not doing item level cataloging until 2022. We were focused on findability, or we were focused on high level basic cataloging And every record made from here on out is going to have additional detail that is more user-focused. Documentation can also be used as a tool for advocacy, education, and communication. Your documentation can in itself be a contribution to the knowledge base of our archives community. So even if it's something that's highly localized and highly specific, it can be a way to share about the projects that you've done and the outcomes that you've achieved. And documentation can take a lot of forms. Like I said, it can be handwritten notes. It can be your calendars and the set of appointments that you have in a given week that describe the functions of your job. It can be a work log that talks about how many visitors you have in a given day, or how many research requests you get. Documentation, data, and documents, the boundaries between them can blur quite a lot, but they are also important, and it's important to take time to create documentation so that you can have a more sustainable, more stable process, and so that the classic question of, if you won the lottery today and left your role tomorrow, what would it take to be able to step into your role and understand what you do? So with apologies to the Rocky Horror Picture Show and anticipation, we're going to talk about documentation here as something that extends your work and creates a record of your work, in addition to being a simple description of your work. So when we talk about a project description that we write for a grant application, we might have documentation of that project in the form of work in progress photos or before and after pictures. For budgets, our documentation might take the form of receipts or invoices that we receive from service providers to substantiate and create a record of our spending that budget. Documentation might also take the form in a budget of knowing what was part of past year's expenses and being able to project forward to create a new budget. So they can be recursive documentation. Timelines can be informed by documentation like your notes on how long things actually take to do. So you might do a little pilot project or a small sample of records that you want to process, and note the amount of time that it takes so that you can create more accurate timelines from that documentation. And disaster management plans, really important documents for institutions like ours in Southern California that are subject to a number of different kinds of natural and human-made disasters. So before and after pictures, even things, casual documents that people don't intend to create as documents, like selfies that use your museum's tag or your archive's hashtag, or research that's shared that has people in your galleries or in your collection areas, that can depict before scenarios when there's an after scenario that you're also taking pictures of. Having apples to apples comparisons can be really important for understanding where your disaster plan might have worked or where you might have needed more and might be making updates to it. So I would like for us to think about, just take a minute to think about all the ways in which we do or maybe don't document our work and maybe should. So I talked about Post-it notes. To-do lists are a form of documentation as well. Calendars, logs, and emails are documentation. So that question of what if you won the lottery today and left your role tomorrow, that gets at the question of how do you fundamentally describe your work and note how you do what you do. A lot of people who are participating in this workshop today have talked about the ways in which a lot of information is held inside people's head. So getting information out of people's heads and into the form of documentations, cataloging records, and the like is incredibly important. So I'll open this up to the group and just ask a really broad question or two really broad questions. Namely, what pieces are missing from the documentation picture at your institution? I know we have people with us today that can speak to that, the sort of wish list of what is it that you wish you had, whether it's a donation record or deposit record, or a Post-it note scribbled on something that says where it came from in the first place. What pieces are you missing that you would like to have? And how does that inform your idea about a small thing or a big thing that you can do now to make that documentation picture better for yourself or for whoever comes next? I'm just going to open it up to everybody. And I know, Kristen, you're going to have, you probably have lots of things that you can talk about that you wish you had, or maybe if you are working at an institution where people have done things well and you were really grateful for some documentation that you came across. That's a great example too. Christian.
Yeah, I was thinking more in terms of where I could, I mean, as far as documentation in the past, it is what it is. It's non-existent in my case.
Exactly.
I mean,
and we don't have time machines. So
exactly. And I do, and
really
actually that's a bit of an exaggeration. It's not really a non-existent. I have been able to piece together things. What is non-existent is an actual, sort of, real inventory or session sheet of our collection. But beyond that, and obviously all of my institutional knowledge, but what I was thinking more in terms of what I'm doing now is the fact that I'm a single staff, don't have a digital archive, right? I've been focusing on our physical collection and doing everything relating to that. We have a digital a session sheet, and any of the documentation that I have amassed thus far has been all digital, and yet I really don't have any provisions for archiving that, right? So that's a problem.
Yes.
Right there, of course.
And that's a great example of a situation where there is, it seems overwhelming, and it's a classic case of, I think the best way to tackle it is just to break off a small piece and do one small thing that gets you like one step closer to the big ideal practice that we all know we should be doing. But it's so daunting. Sometimes that prevents us from taking any action at all. So often documentation can be very casual and it can be very informal. So yeah, you don't have an inventory of your collection maybe, but what you can do is just take your phone and walk through your storage area with the phone camera and just say, this is, say out loud, this is today's date. This is our collection storage area, and narrate just a slow pan through the collection storage area. Or when I'm doing a very high level collection assessment, a big part of it is just opening every box, taking a picture of what's in the box, and capturing just a literal snapshot of what's in the collection at this time in this box today. I'm not doing item level inventories. I'm not doing anything, but I am capturing something. And then I can put those images in a folder, and I can put a date on the folder, and I can say, this is what we've got that day. And it's something that I can refer to and use as a reference. I can also move forward from that starting place and have a before and after. So absolutely. And this is great advice from Denise that starts with, just chunk it out, just do what you can. I also enjoy tools like Pomodoro timers, where you get 15 minutes of work time. I use a free one on my phone. And I don't even remember what the app is called, but it has like a little tomato. It's called Focus Keeper. This is what it looks like. And when I tap on it, it will give me a little timer that dings or makes a little meow noise when I have done 15 minutes, and then I get a 5-minute break. So I think sometimes what we can do is make it bite-sized and simple. Just start a spreadsheet, or just take a clipboard and a piece of paper and a pencil and just do a really rough count, high-level count. These things actually count as documentation. I want to emphasize that essential documents don't have to be formal documents. They can be really informal documents. Yes, Focus Keeper is for iPhone, but I believe it's also available for Android. So you can get it. And it's a free app. I like it because it's so simple. There's all different kinds. If you look for Pomodoro timer in the App Store, you can find almost something that will fit your needs. They have different themes, but yeah, breaking it into chunks and using the tools you have in hand to do one small thing or even one big thing, or small things that lead to big things, are really, really a great way to go about that. Does anybody have an example of documentation? Oh, I'm sorry, Christian, did you have
No, I was just going to say,
addition?
just for clarity, we do have an item level inventory of our collection.
Oh, wow.
What I meant to say was that inventory only exists like on my personal laptop and on a cloud.
Yes.
That's what I mean by we're lacking a digital. So we've done the work of actually creating an item level inventory of the entire collection here.
Got it.
It doesn't exist. If I, God forbid, get hit by a bus on the way leaving here, then it's kind of gone forever.
Please don't get hit by a bus.
I mean, but that's what I mean is that there is no succession plan. There's no emergency plan, which is another thing I'm working on. And then, but also I don't have all of my documentation of the work that I've been doing since I've been here has been completely digital. So I don't have, I'm not creating an institutional archive that's digital that contains all of this. And that is what I'm realizing now as we're talking this through.
Excellent. And you're not alone in that. Lisa, did you have a comment you wanted to make here?
Yeah, I, being part of LA Subject for this long, I've definitely come across different levels of documentation that others have. I don't see a reason why, Christian, you can't print it out. I think that the analog and the notebook gets overlooked. And I was working with one particular group where they had the opposite. Everything was printed out, but then somebody was updating it on the Excel spreadsheet because they had one person who knew how to do Excel, right? I'm like, well, get a schedule, print out the Excel sheet, have everybody update it on the print copy, and then the next quarter, the next month, update it and print it out. I know it sounds like a lot, but if that's what you have, that's what you have.
That's an excellent suggestion. Actually, you're reminding me that I need to do that because that is an excellent suggestion because otherwise we just don't have a means to, create some sort of digital archive, it's really useful.
I want to add a +1 to that. Like printing things out is great. Just whatever files or documents you have on your computer, even if you think of them as living documents that you're adding to all the time, or Google Docs that you share with other people. Print them out, put them in a folder, and then you've instantly got a hard copy backup that in the worst case scenario you could scan and restore from the hard copy backup. I also want to say that having a digital asset management plan or a digital archive plan, it sounds daunting, but I want to invoke the motto of the LOCKS program at Stanford, which is lots of copies keep stuff safe. So if you have a repository or an inventory list or a collection of documentation that is small enough to fit on a flash drive, and flash drives do have large capacity, or even an external hard drive, I recommend if you as just a quick and dirty digital preservation solution, have a backup buddy. So pick a partner from the LA Subject community, maybe somebody that you met at the workshop today, and make them your backup buddy. So you have a copy of their things on a hard drive that you keep at your place, and they have a copy of your files that they keep at their place. That geographic separation is important. It means that if there's an earthquake or a flood or some other, let's pray this doesn't happen event, you have a place you can go to say, hey, our server melted down, my laptop is kaput, can I get that hard drive from you? And exchange those drives, update them on a schedule so that you can just swap them out every 6 months or so, or every quarter. Make it work for you and for your schedule. And I guarantee you, if you make yourself a backup buddy and share a copy of your documents, then you are going to sleep better at night. Now, obviously, this creates some security and confidentiality issues. There may be sensitive information in your documentation that you don't want shared with others. So that's a great opportunity to learn how to do things like password protect files that are saved or folders that are saved onto a drive. That's pretty simple to do. It's a thing that you can Google. And I can also point you towards resources on data security. But honestly, the simple expedient of making a copy onto a flash drive, putting it somewhere, that in itself creates a new procedure. It gives you a little framework where you look at the old drive and you say, oh, these are the things I had. I've updated those things. I also added these things. So I'm going to put those into this structure and add it to our backup schedule. And again, that's something that you can print out on a piece of paper or put a Post-it note on your computer to remind you that that this is where this is where your backup date is coming up again, and it's time to back up your data. I'm a big fan of sending a message out on Twitter from time to time that says, hey, I don't know who needs to hear this, but now is a great time to back up your data on your computer or your personal files on your cloud storage. That goes for our professional selves as well. So that's a great small thing you can do and make it manageable. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good here. And so, yeah, this is also something where enlisting the help of project personnel or volunteer staff can be really helpful. If it's something that you just haven't been able to get to, turn that into a project description. Just blurt out onto a piece of paper or onto a new document, like, here are the things that I need help with that somebody who's not me could do. So that is a great way to think about documentation as being something that you can create and improve upon as you proceed in your institution. So that's Christian was provided us with a great example of a small thing you can do better, and just by printing out copies of your documents. Does anybody else have something to add or an experience where you have good documentation and you made it better? I love to hear those success stories. If anybody has any of those.
I've been doing lately is documenting, like the Bradley Center. We have events, we have exhibitions, we do things on campus. And so often, I'll do it on my phone. I'll take a picture and then that stuff will just sit on my phone. So I've been organizing folders for events. And what we also have is separately from like the library, we have a server. These servers are made by Western Digital. And it costs about $800, but they're swappable drives. So when a drive gets full, you can take them out, or you can have different drives for different purposes. After you pay like the initial $800, which will get you probably a 6 terabyte drive, you can buy them for much cheaper, for like 6 terabytes for $100, and it's redundant. You can set it up so it's redundant. So right in that server, when you back up something, it copies it to the other one. So
that's awesome.
Because all hard drives fail. It's just a fact that eventually they will fail. And so what I've also been doing with those photographs, I found this thing at Best Buy. you know, because it can be like an issue to get photographs off the phone. There's a flash drive. It's made by ScanDisk. So one end of the flash drive will plug into the phone. And the other, and then it flips around, and the other end is a regular USB. So I can download things from my phone onto this flash, plug it into my computer, and access them. It's just so easy because, you know, we're always doing stuff with our phone and we don't think about backing that stuff up. So
exactly. And there are absolutely there's so many good reasons to do that. And I'm glad you brought up documenting things like events and exhibitions. That's something that as a researcher and as somebody who does historical research myself, that is something where you read about exhibitions and you read about these events that happen, and there's often no trace of them anywhere in the historical record. So I think that as people who live in a time and place where the ability to make recordings and make documentation of the things that we experience and the work that we're doing in our collections it's so much easier, and doing the easy thing is not necessarily the wrong thing. I would say that for those flash drive downloads that you talked about, that brings us to the question of mixing the personal and the professional. So making sure that if you are using your personal device to record events, that those things don't get mixed up, because there may be stuff that you don't want to share with your coworkers on your phone. I know that's certainly the case for mine. It's mostly cat pictures. There's a lot of them. So but doing the easy thing or getting what works for you, if that makes it more likely that you will actually get this essential function done, I'm all in favor of that. So yeah, lean into what works for you and what makes sense for you and for your organization. If the alternative is not getting it done at all, then again, perfect versus good. We're always making this judgment and balancing those two qualities. So absolutely, those great tips that you've had there, Keith. I appreciate that contribution. So next, I want to take a look at a little case study of what I'm talking about when I talk about a project becoming a publication, or documentation feeding in a lot of different ways into work that we are doing either independently or in collaboration with others, or as part of larger programs that we're part of. So I think a great example of this is from a fellow UCLA alum and former student that I worked with. I was fortunate to work with during her time at UCLA, Brianna Toth. She worked on a really, really fascinating and fun project with the Bob Baker Marionette Theater. I hope that all of you have had the opportunity to experience the magic that is the Bob Baker Theater. As you may know, if you've been in LA for a while and know this sort of signature feature of our cultural community, the Bob Baker Marionette Theater used to be located in just at the fringes of Echo Park near downtown Los Angeles, and they recently moved to a new location in Eagle Rock. That required taking this library and archive space that you see here that was jam-packed with documents, pictures, sketches. It is a beautiful picture. Ian Byers-Gamber took that picture. He is a talented photographer, but it really, for those of us who work in archives, like this picture will look familiar. Like we've all been in a space like this. We may have a space like this in our own institutions. And the before and after of the archives move is really, really impressive. And it speaks to the ways in which archives accumulate and function, and then sometimes suddenly have to change. So the reason that I am citing this project is the move itself was a big undertaking. And Brianna and her colleagues, including Adam Foster, who was also a UCLA student at the time, worked they were paid under the UCLA Community Archives Lab Mellon Foundation internship project. They were funded to help this underfunded institution move to their new theater space in Highland Park, sorry, not Eagle Rock. So that first involved an audit that just established the scope of the collection and extent of the collections, gave them some data from which they could calculate the storage space needs in linear and cubic feet, kind of created a rough total of the collections by material type, and let them make general recommendations for storage and housing, which will inform things like grant projects and proposals to do preservation implementations for the theater as it goes forward. So this project has been presented and shared in a variety of ways, all of which we get to benefit from now. And Brianna highlights those on her personal website, which is briannatoth.com. And I am going to have us do, as the next step here, a little exercise where we are going to look at and reflect on the ways in which this project was documented by the people participating in it, and the ways in which that documentation then became conference presentations, newsletter articles, so publications in a broadly read theater history publication, and part of the institution's own public-facing presentation of its holdings and its materials. So I'm going to have us go out into breakout rooms. You'll be able to select the breakout room you want to go to. We're going to go, I'm going to ask you all to visit the website, which I'm going to put the link in the chat here. Pardon me because I can't talk and type at the same time, and I forgot to copy and paste. I will put the link in the chat so you all can go there right now. It's the third project down on the About page, and it should be really easy to find. And depending on which breakout room you choose, you'll go to one of the 4 links in that section. So breakout room 1 will be Community Archives Lab Mellon Foundation Project. Group number 2, breakout room 2, will be the Library and Archives Preliminary Inventories as displayed on the BBMT, that's Bob Baker Marionette Theater site. The breakout room 3 will be the newsletter article, which is quite short. And group number 4 will be the Bob Baker Marionette Theater presentation that Brianna and her colleagues gave at the Association of Moving Image Archives conference in 2019. Now, you don't have to read these deeply, just skim them and take a few minutes to note and discuss how whichever of these you're looking at makes use of project documentation or other essential documents like the About Us text from the Marionette Theater's website, a mission statement that might get rephrased as part of the introduction to an article, the project goals and outlines. And how does it make clear the ways in which projects and documentation can all become something, some additional work products that in turn inform our practice in archives. And so I'm going to create our breakout rooms. I'm going to stop screen sharing and create our breakout rooms in just a minute. And it is 1:59 p.m. So at 10 minutes after 2, I'll just give you guys 10 minutes to skim and reflect. And then when we come back, we can talk about what we found.